Do you have a line problem? I don't know about you, but I do not enjoy standing in line, whether it's at the airport or the grocery store. I don't want to sit there and wait for my turn. And when people come to an event, they don't want to stand and wait either. They expect to come to registration, quickly check in, take their bag, and leave. They're not looking for a 30-minute foray into the details of finding out why they don't have a name badge. And our job as meeting planners is to make sure that they don't even notice that they came to registration. It was smooth, it was easy, they checked in and they left. That's all that they want to do. Nobody thinks about all of the background that goes into doing that before the person comes to registration. So there's a few things I want to cover on the video. The first thing is the bottlenecks that we have during certain hours of the event. The second is underestimating hardware needs. What do you need at registration? How much of it do you need? The third is understaffing. How many people that do you have at registration that have experience? And how many people who are temps or new or volunteers do you have at registration? How does that impact the speed that people can check in? And then the last one is a slow on-site printing or check-in process. So those kind of relate to the number 2 and number 3, but we'll get into them more as we go. Before I get into the details, I wanted to tell a little story. So I started out as an independent contractor and I worked on one event, mostly behind the scenes for several years. I did all of the meeting planning, I did the catering, I helped with the exhibit and the exhibit sales, but I hadn't jumped into registration until the event had grown large enough that it needed a more professional registration assistant or manager. And I thought that I could do it. And to be fair, for my very first registration, I didn't do horrible, but I did make a lot of mistakes. And some of those mistakes are the ones that I want to make sure you don't have to go through. So one of the things that I did is I pre-printed my name badges. I had them all ready to go, had them nicely laid out and organized. I had them pre-stuffed into their badges so that would be easy for us to hand it out as people came. I set up my lines with stanchions and I made sure that there was a P to Z line. I also had an exhibit line and a help desk. With all of that planning, it still went wrong. And these are the things that really caused the problem. Going back to that bottleneck, one of the things that I hadn't considered, mostly due to lack of experience, but also not realizing that I could give input on the agenda and how the agenda was planned. Registration opened at 7:30 in the morning. Keynotes started at 8 with awards and then the first keynote getting on the stage at 8:30. That meant over 400 people had to check in from 7:30 until 8. With a team of volunteers, pre-printed badges, it became the perfect storm for everything to go wrong. The volunteers that I had didn't understand my organization system and they couldn't find badges. So over and over again, we had people going to the help desk to get a badge printed. But with pre-printed badges, the printing process is not fast. We had a normal office printer. We had a volunteer who had been trained on how to print a badge. And in a normal situation, it would have been fine. But when you have 40 people waiting for you, they're all upset and they're asking, why do I not have a badge? And each one is having to be printed and stuffed. It just backfired and snowballed until it became a disaster. We got through it. That first hour passed, we were all stressed, and then it calmed down for the rest of the event. So that's what I want to talk to you about bottlenecks. There's so many ways that you can reduce the flow at registration from the beginning. So after that year, one of the things I suggested to the committee was, let's have a welcome reception. It doesn't cost that much money. It's not much more than what we would have normally spent, and it brings people in to get their badge before the event starts. It's low pressure. They can get a drink, they can have fun, they can connect with old colleagues and friends, and maybe they might connect with exhibitors if you have an exhibit as part of it. That is now a standard practice at almost all of our events, where we have a welcome reception, no matter how small the event is, so that people can come and pick up their badge. What it does is reduces the flow by over 50% for that morning of when you're trying to get people into their keynote session. The second thing that we did is that we really looked at how many people do we need at the registration desk. So I want to give some tips for if you're doing pre-printed badges, how do you plan staffing appropriately? First, I don't really recommend pre-printing badges for events larger than 150. I know it can be done, I've done it, but it's stressful, it's difficult, it slows it down. You will have lines. And the point of this video is how do you get rid of your registration lines? Well, don't pre-print badges for events over 150. And then whenever you are going to work with pre-printed badges, make sure that you're breaking up the times that when people will arrive. A welcome reception, moving your keynote later in the day, or moving your sessions later in the day. And so the first couple hours, maybe it's a breakfast that people will be coming to that's come and go, or an exhibit hall time when people are coming and going. You need something that doesn't require people to show up at a specific time because it will stress them out. You can also offer things right around that time, like a coffee or something to refresh people. It just really alleviates some of that stress. Then some of the other things I would recommend is having at least one staff person per 50 people that you have checking in. You're reducing the cost of all of the kiosks and the technology, but really that technology is there to replace people. And that is what computers do for us. It's what AI is doing for us. It gives us an opportunity to make a process more efficient and reducing the number of staff that you need. Well, if you're going to go analog, then you do need more people. And a lot of times with my smaller events, we are working with volunteers at registration. They don't have the budget to afford a paid staff. And so I definitely would say having volunteers who've had a chance to be trained, but just having more of them that can cover those heavy times to make sure that every step is covered and being taken care of. The next thing that I want to talk about is on-demand badge printing. I highly recommend this as an option for any event over 150. I'm going to encourage staggered arrivals. That is still something that applies even with kiosk printing. One of my shows, it's about 500. They have an expo, welcome reception, and check-in all the first day. And we get 75% of our registrations coming in during that welcome reception. And it makes the rest of the event just so smooth with registration, and everybody loves it. Then with the ratios, I would recommend one kiosk per 100 people. And of course, if you've got a really, really big show, let's say you have 2,000, 3,000 people, I'm not talking about 30 kiosks. There's a limit to this ratio. When I'm talking 150 to and more, I would say that the range that I'm estimating is for shows that are from 150 people up to about 1,000. After 1,000 and however many kiosks that ends up being, like 8 to 10 kiosks, then at that point you have to break up your agenda and create ways for people to check in gradually. Another one of the shows that we work with, they have it set up so that people can go to a coffee bar and get coffee while they're waiting for the line to clear up. They also have a come and go style program where people do have things that they can go in and get seats and go see, but most of their program is more come and go. It really is important for those larger events that you don't put the bulk of your registrations on the day that people are coming in to go see a keynote. All right, moving on. We have emphasized that point enough, I think. The next thing is testing hardware and having backups ready. Now, there's plenty of options out there of companies who will do this for you. If you have the budget, definitely it's worth looking into companies like Cvent. They have an on-arrival system. They'll send staffing out there to set up your equipment. They don't typically supply on-site staffing. That's something that our team typically does, but they will supply someone who will come, make sure that the equipment's working properly, and that will have a smooth check-in process. There's other companies who do the same, and I'm happy to provide more recommendations. A few other general tips that I wanted to cover is don't sort people by last name. This is one of the things going back to my story. In my experience, it is way better to have just plain registration lines, no sorting by name, so that people can come to any line. They can pick up their badge and talk to the staff, and the attendee will automatically go to the shortest line. And so it prevents any long lines from building up. Whereas if you have the instruction that you have to go to that line with the letters to your last name, then those lines end up being the longest ones. Then, last but not least, is having a dedicated help desk, which I mentioned in my little story. That is somebody who needs to know the ins and outs of the registration system, who is confident in being able to fix things, to provide support, and to give feedback or input to the attendee. They probably will also have an opportunity to reprint name badges if you're also pre-printing, and they will also assist if there's like payment issues or something. And then the final thing that is important is just reducing your overall assembly time. We have a couple of different ways that we approach this. With the lanyards, you can either put them on lanyard trees over on the side where the attendees can pick them up. You can also pre-clip them. We've done both and we like both. It just really depends on the scale of your event as well as what style badge you have. The badges that have the two clips tend to be easier to pre-clip them, but if you have 2,000 people coming, that's not the greatest solution. And for the larger events, I do tend to just have the lanyards hanging on the side so that attendees can do a self-serve. Now, speaking of self-serve, there's a whole nother level where attendees can do the whole check-in process on their own, where the badge will print out for them, they stuff their own badge, and it becomes a not human touch at all. I think that's where you end up having to go the larger the event is. But I do think it's important to have somebody that is sitting at a desk that is always available and can answer questions no matter what style of registration you chose. So I think that's the end of what I'm going to talk about. I hope this was helpful. And there's a lot of ways that it can still go wrong. And I will share a little bit of a funny story. We had a recent event with a on arrival with Cvent. We had the tech that was supposed to come in and check all the equipment. We made sure that the equipment was charged, that everything was there, that had all arrived, and we asked our temp staff, who was going to manage registration, to pre-clip the badges. Well, we had left the badge paper in the same room, and it was next to the badges. It never occurred to us that there might be some confusion there, but they started ripping off the badge paper and stuffing it in the badges before they were printed. Again, not sure what was missed there or how that became the task, but they did do that, and they ended up using about 20% of our badge stock, maybe 25%. Thankfully, one of the things that Cvent does require, because of the way that their system works, they require you to order a lot more than you need. And so in this case, it helped us out a lot because we had plenty of badge stock to get through all of our registrations and the reprints that we needed in case there was issues. But no matter how much you plan, there's always going to be a situation that you just have to pivot and make adjustments as needed. So in this case, event would have overnighted extra badge stock to us. It would have cost an arm and a leg, but we didn't need it, and I was thankful for that. So I can also recommend different registration systems. We've used several, like I mentioned and talked about multiple times. There's Cvent, there's Good, Bad, and Ugly, and I'll probably do another video reviewing registration systems. Another one is Whova. We've used that one several times. We have a partner who runs his own registration company and has a really nice simplified system. He runs a company called The Badge Guys. We've tried Eventify, we have used Feedloop and Sugo and Microspec. So there are lots of registration systems to choose from. Each of them have their pros and their cons depending on what you need. Most of the time, because those registration systems have to be connected to other platforms, like an app or a speaker management portal or another use for it. And the nice thing is they often have built-in ways that you can do that, but it really depends on your use case. So if you have questions and you'd like to know about a specific registration system that you're thinking about signing on with, just put a note in the comment and we'd love to give you our thoughts about what we think would be best for your use case. All right, thanks.